Okay. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lucio. I am an alcoholic, and I am an addict and a compulsive gambler. Well,
Buy my store.
compulsive gambler too. This one is a fourth step workshop, and as we know, it is a 4-week course, if you want to call it course. Fun, if you want to call it fun. And the first week we talk about resentment. The second, we talk about fears. The third, that is today, we talk about harm done to others, the sex inventory, so-called sex inventory. And then the fourth week we make a recap of everything that we have reviewed, eventually making some participation with the people, just to bring forward something, doubts or whatever it is. So tonight we will talk about the sex inventory, and just to make it clear, I didn't bring any pictures.
Damn.
No porno movies.
No flicks.
No flicks. No tools, no nothing.
I got some.
And actually, more than sex inventory, that can be misleading at times. At least the way I perceive the stats, I prefer to call it the harm done to others. And I do believe that it is usually called the sex inventory because one of the most difficult and probably painful aspect of our life that's been affected by our drinking career or by our addictions has been in relationships. And many of the relationships usually had sex involved. Also because sex is one of the most important and powerful drive in human life, either because it is as a mean of reproduction, or because it is a mean of enjoyment, or it is a mean of creating intimacy between partners. So it is a very strong drive, and it is something that affects our lives, human lives, extremely so. And alcohol usually, in combination with alcohol, can create a lot of problems and can create a lot of harm, a lot of damage. Some of the damage is done to ourselves, and a lot of damage is done to other people. So before getting into the specific of that inventory, I would like, as usual, to make a little recap of why we examine this aspect of our life. Fourth step, inventory. It is an inventory. It means we have to take honest stock of our assets and our liabilities. Our assets are the good part of us, and the liabilities are what we call the character defects. Somebody want to call them character flaws. Sometimes I want to say what we did wrong in our life. The goal of the inventory is to find out what our asset and liabilities, and the purpose is to change our behavior in such a way that we will try to diminish the liabilities and increase the assets. And that means that we have to find out which one are our more glaring and evident character defects, the one that mostly affected our life and created problem in our lives, and try to change our behavior in relation to those character defects, and change in a way that we improve the opposite of the character defect, that would be the qualities. As Barnaby pointed out, in one of the handout that I gave you, there is a page of character defects and the opposite, that is the qualities, head to head, so that you have a sense of where your direction is going. And actually, maybe later I will give you another handout that is a kind of daily inventory where all the character defects or the assets are listed, and for each day you can mark which one actually you acted on there. I think that one is come from Gamblers Anonymous, but can be adapted to us very easily. So that is the goal of the fourth step. to find the asset and the liabilities, to point out what our character defects are. And why do we do that? Because we have to produce a change in our life, and the change is produce the change of ourselves, the way we act, the way we behave. And why it is that important? Well, because we reach step 3, with a very simple process of the powerlessness over our addiction, over alcohol, the manageability of our life. We finally came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could help us to go back to a normal way of living or restore us to sanity. We talked in the previous weeks about the concept of sanity as is seen in the big book. It is the ability of making balanced decisions, essentially in front of knowing the consequences, the seriousness of certain consequences. We decide to have that drink, the first drink, that we know will bring us all the serious consequences. This one is defined basically as insanity. So we've basically realized that we cannot do it by ourselves. We need the help. We recognize we need the help of a power higher than ourselves. And then in step 3, we make a decision, the decision to surrender our life and our will to the care of this higher power. And why is our will and our life, why do we have to surrender it? Because our life and our will are exactly what created the problems. Our will is the root of our problem, because our will is based on our ego. And the ego, as is said very clearly in the big book, is what defeated us. So it's very simple. We come to the conclusion that our ego is what defeated us, so we have to find a way of controlling that ego, and the only way that we can control it is not controlling it. Basically, just giving it up. And the way to give it up, we just surrender it to our higher power. So the separation between us and the ego is an essential part of the process of the 12 steps. The goal that we have to step 12 and surrender is to reach, to have a kind of channel of communication with our higher power. That, as we said before, it can be any higher power that you choose to have. In my case, after a while, I decided to call it God, as I understand him. And just to let you know what my God is just unconditional love. That's all it is, my God. I don't give any other attributes, but for the fact that it's just conditional love, that is my own. But you will have your own. What is my relationship with this higher power? My relationship is that if I have to surrender my will and my life to the care of this higher power, obviously I have to create a kind of connection with it. And if I want to ask this higher power to let me know his will for me, so that he can give me direction in my life, I have to have this channel of communication. But the channel of communication that we call the sunlight of the spirit is at this moment in our recovery, most of the time, completely clogged. Basically, there are certain emotional disturbances within ourselves that do not allow us to have this clear conscious contact with our higher power. Okay. And the goal of the 4th step is to find out which one are these impediments, these obstacles to our conscious contact, try to get rid of them. And at the same time, in the process that we said, the process of change that we begin, to start to act in a way that those impediments will not keep building up. Because if I get rid of all my resentments, and I say, I don't have any more resentments until now, and then tomorrow morning I start to build new one, obviously the process is going stood up. Okay, so I can get rid of all the resentments, but then I have to act in a way that I will not accumulate more resentments. So I will start to change my behavior and my way of thinking. So the principle that basically will guide my life slowly have to change. And I used to say, and I like to say, that essentially we follow the 4 basic principles that we learn. Some of the principles, I consider them the important one, the most important one. There are rigorous honesty, open-mindedness, compassion, and love. So rigorous honesty is essential. And we read several times in the big book how honesty is there at the basis of this program. You know, rarely have we seen somebody fail who blah, blah, blah. Those unfortunate is the one that cannot, have a way of living that demand rigorous honesty. So rigorous honesty is something that we have to learn how to develop in ourselves. And it is a process. And it is a process that is almost parallel when we start to work the steps. When we start to see the area where our life has been completely dishonest and we look, for example, at the resentments and at the fears, then we know the area that we have to concentrate in our behavior so that our behavior will reflect honesty. We mentioned also last week that honesty is not just telling the truth. And I like the verse that I quoted, and I'm sure that is from one of the former world Whitman, that a truth said with bad intent beats all the lies you can invent. Essentially, you can say the truth and be totally dishonest. Honesty is not coming from what you say, but it comes from the intentions underlying what you say and what you do. So it is essential that we learn how to go inside ourselves and see what are the motives and the reasons that underline our actions and our words. It's very easy. Example, gossiping. At times we can say the truth about someone, but the intention are actually to undermine the position of the other person. The intentions might be of make us feel better. Even if we say the truth, there is something negative about somebody else. If we say that with the intention of feeling better ourselves, or with the sense of diminishing their authority or making them not be liked by someone we would like to be with, well, that is dishonest. Yeah, I said the truth about a person, but I'm a dishonest person. So that is what I have started to change, to try to see what are the motives behind myself and have rigorous honesty. Honesty is important because it prevents us, if we apply it, from deluding ourselves and from harming other people. Okay? Open-mindedness. Open-mindedness is essential because it implies the absence of judgment. And judgment is usually what keeps us away from peace, internal peace. So if we are open-minded, we will not judge other people, but we just accept the possibility of differences, then we avoid judgment, we can keep the peace that we have inside. And compassion is very important because the moment that we identify with the plight of other people, we identify with the problem of other people, we identify with the pain of other people, and we look at them with a compassionate soul, we go out of the ego, out of the self. The very moment that we think about somebody else's pain and we have compassion with them and for them and their pain, we bring ourselves out of the ego. And that is a very important process, obviously. And finally, love. Love is reconnecting with the source. I do believe that the source inside, this energy that we have inside, is actually love. Love is the ability to have all these qualities together. This ability of extending and accepting everything in a sense of unity. So when we reconnect to the source, that is the source, internal source, what we are, what God is, or what your higher power might be, once you reconnect to this source, the source of your higher power, then what happens, the fear disappears. So love is a way of just going back into the outgrowth of fear. When fear starts to decrease or disappear, then the character defects start to decrease and disappear. Because faith is reinforced. If I extend love what I do, I made an act of faith. An act of faith, and faith is based on my higher power, on the source of the energy. In this act of faith, I essentially deny fear. Because fear and faith are basically excluding each other. We said last week that fear is God's way to let us know that we are walking away from Him. And that is true. I know for sure that in my life, when I feel some anxieties, when I start to feel a sense of uncertainty or sense of discomfort, I really say, wait a minute, I'm walking the wrong direction. And so I turn backward and say, okay, God, oops, I forgot about you. Let me just go back into the path. So this is one of the four principles that I believe can help us at least not create more wreckage in our life. So this one is a parallel process that we follow at the same time that we get rid of the wreckage of the past, that it is called. We said that the soul is what the ego is what defeated us, and as it says in the big book, being convinced about that, we examine its common manifestations. And the common manifestations are exactly resentment, fear, and then harm done to others. And that's what we will talk particularly tonight. We talk about resentment. We see how we can how we deal with them, how we can get rid of them. We talk about fear, and we talk about how fear is the only antidote that we have for fear is faith. And we said our faith is essentially something that we have to grow within ourselves. Faith, it doesn't come simply, we have to work for it. And we work through the surrender aspect. So the process is we start to surrender something, things happen, positive things happen, we increase our faith, we surrender more good things happen to us, and that is the process that we go. Now, we said also in the previous 2 weeks that one of the major tools that ego uses to bring us, to keep us in bondage, and therefore to bring us into relapsing, to drinking again, are character defects. Okay? Basically, the character defects are okay, let's put it this way. What are character defects? Character defects, as it says on the 12 and 12, very clearly, they are essentially natural instinct gone astray. Astray, yeah. Gone astray. I never learned this word, but anyway. Basically, natural instinct get fucked up. So what happened is that we have natural instincts that are given to us by nature, by God, whatever you want to believe in this sense. And those natural instincts usually have a certain balance. And when fear that is infused, usually brought by ego, into this instinct, the instinct becomes out of wacko, astray, and then they become character defect. One example that we made was about the natural instinct for security, for financial security, for material security. So we can work, we can do things to improve our conditions, to have a better place to live, a better clothing. When fear that we will not have enough get involved with this kind of instinct, the instinct that you explode and become greed. Basically, I think I will never have enough. So the fear takes a natural instinct to provide something to us and become greed. And in greed, we start to attach all the other character defects, that come with it. We become dishonest, we become selfish, we start to cheat on people, we start to lie, and then, of course, reinforces the fear and disaster happen in our life. So that is one of the process. In terms of sex, the natural instinct for sex, it can be attacked by fear that, for example, we will not have the partner that we want to have, or we can be attacked by the fear that we will not have enough sex, or we will attack by the fear that we will be judged by sex. So the fear can attack the different aspects of our sexual relations, and that can become a disaster because, for example, the fear that I will not have enough sex and become lost. And so suddenly, depending what my sexual preferences are, everybody that I see that I like, oops. There is this obsession with sex that can come from that. Sex can become also a tool of self-destruction in terms of using that as a tool for low self-esteem. And I know for sure that was what I was using when I was young, and when I was not so young, also, to be honest, I know that, there were certain women that I might enjoy being with a lot, but they were not good looking enough, to become my girlfriend. Because if I can walk around with a babe, with this beautiful, gorgeous woman that all the guys turn around to look at, and plus she's intelligent, and plus she's personable, and she's with me. Hello, guys, avec moi, I have to be someone. And that was my rationale for just creating my relationship. I could be someone if that woman would be with me. So I would have the kind of admiration that I thought I would never have otherwise, because I thought that I was, of course, all my character defects, and my ego was telling me that I was a piece of garbage, that I could have never had anybody, that nobody would like me. So the only way that I could do sex would be one of these ways. So relationship in this sense. And here we are talking tonight about harm done to others and done to ourselves. How can we proceed in terms of making this inventory? Well, one way that we can do, first, what it is harm, because that is a kind of very controversial concept, what it means harm. Harm is not just beating up someone. Okay, harm is not only have cruelty towards someone. Harm can be, for example, abstaining our presence when we could give it to people that love us. Being absent. That is a form of harm. We probably did nothing to harm technically, but actually we did harm. When I was not present when my daughter was growing up, because I was spending nights and nights getting drunk and gambling or disappearing because people was looking all over for me. Not only I did harm to the people that I took the money from, not only did harm to my wife at the time because she was totally sick worried, I was harming my daughter that was 4, 5, 6, 7 years old because I was not there as a presence. And she needed a presence. So there are different ways of doing harm. Harm essentially could be considered like depriving somebody else of the right to live their life properly, their own life. And in the case of my daughter, because she was not able to make choices, I was making choices for her that were not really, obviously not the best one for her. So I did harm her. Okay? We can harm friends. How? Just by destroying ourselves. That was one of the things actually that I want to point out, because it reverted on me. When I was drinking and using, and I was really destroying my life day after day after day, and people was telling me, why are you doing that? Because it's none of your damn business. I'm just harming myself. So, I'm not doing anything to you. Why don't you just leave me alone? Let me do what I want to do. If I want to die, let me die. Fuck off. That was my simple, and it made sense to me. It's my life. Let me do what I want with my life. Never mind if they knew what I did not know, that actually I did not want to die, that I was just in pain and I was destroying myself because I thought I had no other choices. Okay. What happened that my son suddenly turned out to be an addict, an alcoholic, and a compulsive gambler. And he was destroying his life. And he told me exactly the same thing. He lives in Italy. When I was trying to talk to him, when he came visiting me, he said, "Why do you kill yourself? Because just to do what I did, or for vengeance, or what?" He said, "Daddy, I'm doing just what I want with my life. I'm harming only myself. Get off my back. You know, I'm not taking money away from you. I'm not asking you for money. So what do you want from me?" And I felt the pain, humongous pain. And then I realized, I said, that is the way of harming other people. When you deprive other people, people that care for you, of your well-being, that is harming another person. I was thinking that I was harming only myself. In reality, I know that I was harming other people just doing that to myself. So this kind of inventory is kind of difficult in the sense, how do we identify actually the people that we harm? Okay? And why do we have to identify the people that we harm? I need to stress over here that this one is the fourth step, okay? Is just the preparation for the fifth step, and for the sixth and seventh, then 8 and 9. And I say that because I remember that during my fourth step, when I was thinking about harm done to others, one of the blocking points that I had, oh my God, I will have to make amends to these people. The idea that I had to make amends was already preventing me from being honest. In place of just saying, okay, I harmed these people, without attachment to it, just in an objective way, saying, okay, it's true, I harmed these people. Immediately I was thinking, excuses not to put those people into the list because I knew that I might have to make amends to them. And for me, the idea of making amends was really scary. So I really want to stress the point that forget about amends. Forget about that you will have to face this situation and those people, maybe, because that is not the moment. This one is just trying to make an inventory to find out our character defects. The fact that in the process we prepare this list, okay, doesn't mean that we have to act on the list. That's why the steps are coming numbered. This one is step 4, the kind preparation of step 5. We will discuss that with our sponsor. Then the sponsor will let us know what we have to do with those things. When it becomes the time to make amends, the list will not be completed. We will talk with the sponsor how we'll make amends, if we need to make them, when we need to make them, how we need to make them. So it's not really, let's not use that fear of the past or what will happen to block us from the moment. Is that clear, the reason, you know? And I really stress it because I know that that was a big obstacle in my first step. And because working with other sponsees, I discovered that many of the sponsees actually had the same fear, you know. But to have to make amends to this person, you know. Let's talk about character defects. This step is to find out what are how we are made of, what we are made of, and what we have to change. Not to get rid now of that sense of shame and guilt now. We get rid of the resentments now because that's what we have to do. We have to get rid of the anger. We try to outgrow fear, and then once we start to see the harm that we have done to others, okay, and in this respect, what is very important is the assets list. Because it's very easy when we go back in the past and we try to see the damage that we have done to ourselves and to other people. It's so easy to go down in the deep end and say, oh God, I'm so ashamed of myself. I am such a bad person. I'm such an awful person. That we need to make an effort to actually see the positive things that we did. Even if to us it appears to be minimal or not really balancing off the negative, never mind. let's not go in the dramatic aspect, I am the worst of the worst. Because that is the reverse pride. Go back into self-pity. I am the best of being the worst.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was so funny, going to a meeting, and I thought that my story was so awful, and suddenly seeing somebody had a story worse than mine, and I was pissed off. Maybe he's making up, because I thought my story was the worst one. How come this one is worse than mine? It really pissed me off. But at times there was a sense I was trying to find reason why mine was different, so that I could say it's worse than his. But that is a common emotional thing. We don't want to give up. Suddenly, to hear people tell me, you know what, you're normal. As an alcoholic, as an addict person, you're nothing special. Excuse me? I am special. I did all these bad things. I am special. And then, all the guys, all you guys, I realized that I'm not special. That was hard. That was very hard to swallow, because my uniqueness suddenly had been taken away from me. I'm not unique any longer. And that was a big blow to my image, At least I am bad, but I'm really bad. And suddenly it's you're nothing, Oh yeah, we went through that. We are worse than that. Oh, you too? Yeah, me too. You too? Suddenly, that is something that really can create this kind of turmoil, because there is a sense of comfort in being the shit that we created. It is so obvious, so common, that I rather create the same destruction that before, because I know the consequence will be a certain type of pain I'm familiar with. And I rather have that familiarity, because I know that pain will last a certain amount of time. I know how to deal with it. I know that I will cry. I will probably get so drunk that I will forget. I know that I will just start to pray. I know that I will start to drive the car like crazy. I know that I will put my hand under the pillows, and after 3 days I will say, okay, I'm feeling better. I know that all these things happen. I know how to deal with it. So I'd rather go through that phase than not have to go face to face with something different. That can be being well, try something different, and I can get a different kind of pain. I don't want it. So those kind of emotions that I went through when I did my first step, because shame and guilt were so powerful in me, that I felt they were absolutely unique. And then I realized that actually my shame and my guilt were not unique. Everybody had it. Everybody went through that. Shame and guilt are maybe, in my opinion, that is my opinion, are probably the most powerful tool that the ego has, even stronger than resentment and stronger than fear. Because shame and guilt are growing with us, came with us, and really affect what the ego projected as our image. Are really the easiest tool to bring us into self-pity. And once we are in self-pity, goodbye. Once we indulge in being in self-pity, you can say goodbye to your sobriety. That is a fact. So self-pity has to be watched very carefully, and shame and guilt have to be dealt with very carefully. One of the points that we have to really have clear in our eyes is the past cannot be changed. There is nothing you can do, guys. Nothing I can do to change my past. Nothing. Nothing. So the only thing that I have is the now. So wasting my energy into regretting something that I did is an exercise in futility, because I can do nothing to change it. It will be there. But I have other options. For example, I might go back in the past and see that all those awful things that I did, they had a reason, actually. They had a reason to be. In place of saying, I wasted 40 years of my life. That is arrogance. That is real arrogance. Who the hell am I to waste my life? I lived my life in a way that had to be in a certain way, and it was in that way. I had no choice at that moment. Everything is as it's supposed to be, period. Because if I am now, that's what I'm supposed to be now, period. So I can go back to the past and see what is the meaning of my life. And then when God, when the higher power come into the picture, and says, okay, I had other plans for you. And in my case, as an alcoholic, I know that all the destruction and the pain that I went through, my history, is the tools that God gave me to relate to a newcomer, to relate to other people that are going through the same. It's very clear from our big book that essentially only an alcoholic can understand another alcoholic. Having been an alcoholic, I have been blessed with a tool that my brother, that is a psychiatrist and is a doctor and is extremely intelligent and is a wonderful person, doesn't have. I can relate to other alcoholics. He can help autistic kids. My brother, you can never help an alcoholic. I can. Because I can just extend my hand and say, here I am, brother. Give me a hug. I'm here in the same boat. If I would have not lived the life that I had, if I would have not gone through all the experience that I went through, I would not have that kind of blessing. So at this point you realize that actually you can change the shame and guilt in a different emotions of gratitude. It was so hard for me to understand when people would say, I am a grateful recovery alcoholic. And I said, fuck, you have no more family, you're poor, you're homeless, you are just all twisted. What the hell are you grateful for? That was my damn thinking, Now I understand, because I am a damn grateful recovering alcoholic. I've been blessed with this gift.
Is it okay to ask questions?
Absolutely.
I don't know, this is my first night here, although I'll be back, but I don't know the format.
Welcome.
Yes, welcome.
Is it okay to ask a question?
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask you, you said that self-pity is pride, I think you said in reverse?
Mm-hmm.
I think you used that word.
Yeah.
I won't say that I have no arrogance issues, but I suffer with depression sometimes, and self-pity is a familiar... I don't understand that concept, so could you speak about that for a minute?
I can say how I perceive that. Pride is believing in one's values, perceived values, okay? And try to appear or to be always right or the best, okay? I'm proud of my achievement. I'm proud of my car. I'm proud of my house. I'm proud of my score in school. I'm proud of certain things. I'm proud of having my dignity intact. As an alcoholic, that is oxymorons, but anyway, I was really proud to have my dignity intact, Yeah, I was vomiting in the middle of the street, I was waking up under the bench, but he didn't respect me. So, this one are the kind of illusion. So this one is pride. When I take the same sense of attitude, okay, the same kind of attitude, that I have to defend who I am in the negative of, I am so bad, I'm so poor, I'm so ugly person, I'm such an awful human being. That is pride in a negative aspect.
A great example that I think everyone in the room is familiar is the guy who has the worst drunkalog. He takes proud that he lost his house. He tells his drunkalog in the sense of like, I left my wife, I lost my kids, and he makes it into the greatest part. And he takes pride in having hit a bottom that's worse than your bottom. And it's, you hear about people talking about, well, I never saw heroin. I only smoked it. I never did. I never drank and drive. And then you hear about other people, it's like, oh, I was in 20 car accidents, I drank and drove, I did all this. And they take pride in what normally be something you should not take pride in. I mean, normal people don't brag about drinking and driving.
Better than is a pride concept I can relate to, but self-pity.
Well, that is
I don't feel very.
that kind of pride it brings to self-pity. You see, I am so bad. I created 20 car accidents because I can be so drunk. That is self-pity.
And then
Go ahead.
sorry, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. So then that pride of being the worst feeds on itself, and it's just like someone who's poor can take being impoverished can be a reverse form of greed. Instead of being so greedy that they give everything up, that they are worse than everyone else, they have so hard on them that they force themselves to lose jobs because they're so insecure about being impoverished that the greed goes full circle to destroy themselves financially, where they cause the ruin that they fear. And it's the way that pride goes full circle from being I'm the best person to where it comes I am the worst person. There was nothing worse than me. I am the most pathetic guy. No woman would ever love me. No way will I get the job. I will never be good enough. I'll never lose the weight. I will never date the girl. Where it feeds into that, where it goes so far full circle that the hatred of oneself or the fear that you're not going to be taken care of, which comes into play where the self-hatred of self-pity is pride flipped completely 360 degrees, where it goes from like I'm the best person to I'm the worst person to there's no one worse than me to does that make sense?
See, self-pity, yeah.
So what is depression? If self-pity is just a
Well, one second, because depression can be actually something that can be physiologically, doing. If you have certain, there is a normal balance usually that is considered normal balance of serotonin or whatever are the chemicals that come to the brains that give us a certain balanced perception or unbalance in certain aspects. There are other people that clinically, physically, they do not produce naturally those kind of chemicals in the mind that they, even when they want, they cannot see the possibility of just having this kind of positive reaction to things. That is a kind of physiological lack in the body. Okay, so I do not know. I don't deal with depression. I'm not a doctor, so I do not know what the aspect of self-pity within the depression world could be. What I'm saying is that at times depression can be the results not so much of a physical illness, of a physiological imbalance, but it can be a form of a rouse, a tool that is used by the ego to make us feel down so we can accept the ego, the negative pride, into and transform into self-pity. That is a kind of self-pity I'm talking about. Okay? I was depressed, but I was depressed because my life had no hope. Okay? There was a different aspect. I was not depressed, physiologically depressed. I didn't need pills to suddenly try to reestablish a certain chemical balance in my body, but I needed a spiritual solution. Essentially, I discovered that the sense of my depression was for the lack of something was lacking from within. And I discovered that as soon as I gave myself completely to this program, that emptiness that was causing me the sense of total disinterest for life. Actually, I have an active interest in finishing with my life. I discovered that as soon as I put myself into this program, that I start to make the effort and I have the willingness to change, produce changes within myself following these steps, suddenly the sense of discomfort starts to disappear. The sense of depression that I had starts to really disappear. I start to feel myself with other emotions. And I discovered that I could redefine what the goals in my life were, what the certain concepts like success, like happiness were. I could redefine them within a different frame, and I could suddenly start to feel that something was flowing within me that actually I always had, and I kept trapped. It was trapped down. But that was my kind of depression. Okay, so I know that that kind of depression is similar to a depression that a lot of other alcoholics have. Okay, and that when I refer to 1 second, when I refer to self-pity, I refer to that kind of depression that can find the solution in a spiritual approach to life. Yes, Miguel.
Well, my experience has been, I mean, what I've learned so far also is that, when I'm using, it makes it worse. I mean, if I'm using alcohol and drugs, it basically affects me really even more so. If I stay away, if I'm not using for a while, all of that gets also a little bit better.
But you see,
because I'm really affected by the drugs and the alcohol.
Which are
Well,
depressant.
yeah,
That's
but
what
you know,
I'm saying.
Make
that's...
it depressant to make you more
Yeah.
depressed.
Why do you think the first goal that we have in AA is what? To not drink today. Abstinence is the most important goal.
Absolutely.
Because there is no way that you can go through a spiritual growth drunk. So abstinence is obviously the first step that we have to take. Okay? This abstinence clear our mind. Don't forget that usually, and I just quote the big book, the drinking is by the symptom. It's a symptom of a malady, of an uneasiness with life that we have from within. That's the reason why the spiritual solution is what we need. That's the reason why we ask to be relieved from the compulsion of drinking in a spiritual way. And then we realize that when we are feeling fulfilled, when we don't need any longer to drink. Yes, the brain still keep telling us, would be nice. Now you can control it. Hello, 1 beer today would really be okay. You can stop it this time. That is the ego that just doesn't want you to find the spiritual solution and want to bring you back. Because once your brain is, more than the brain is, both the brain and the heart are just confused by the alcohol, then the ego is in total control. Why? Because fear comes, no matter what. When fear comes, you're fucked. So that's why abstinence, for us, is essential. This is not a program to teach us how to drink better. Just to make it clear, This is a program that says you might find joy and happiness and freedom without drinking. Basically, this program tells us you don't have to drink.
As my sponsor pointed out to me, when I got together with him when I had 5 years, and he said, "Okay, you're no longer a newcomer at 5 years," and he said, "You now have to do the real work of AA because you've done your 4 steps, I'd done almost all my amendment list, I'd sponsored people." He said, "Now it's really about the real thing about Alcoholics Anonymous is getting a spiritual life. It is getting sober is kind of like the secondary. It's the first thing you have to do. It's a secondary effect of getting a spiritual life. Like if I was a sex addict, it's getting abstinence and sexual behavior into an appropriate thing. If I was a gambler, stopping gambling, and then it turns out getting spiritual is the real thing I'm trying to do, because all the problems that I faced as an alcoholic, and most alcoholics I know, were that something was missing from my life. If I got drunk, I'd feel better. If I got laid, I'd feel better. If I had a little bit more money in my pocket, I'd feel better. If I got laid, drunk, and had more money in my pocket, everything would be better. And when I stop drinking, that hole doesn't go away. So I do the steps. The steps give me a spiritual solution. The spiritual solution fills that alcoholic-shaped hole, which turns out to be a God-shaped hole. Does that make sense?
But before you can fill the hole, you have to get rid of garbage, which is step 4.
Yeah.
Well, you see, all the steps are integrated, okay? You remember, we keep step 3 on hold for the moment because we keep launching, trying to find this complete conscious contact with our higher power. We keep it in hold, still surrendering every day. You see, the goal is not to surrender every day because that is really a lot of a job. If I have to surrender every day, it's a lot of a job. But if I can surrender and then suddenly stay surrendered, then life becomes much easier. But how can I stay surrendered? I can stay surrendered that I am completely at peace with myself if I'm clean completely myself and this communication, this channel with my higher power is completely open. Then I can stay surrendered. Once in a while, the crisis arises and I have to surrender again. But in place of becoming every 10 minutes surrendering, I am in a state of being surrendered. In that state, I can really flourish. I can really improve my conscious contact with my higher power and improve my sense of serenity and joy and happiness and freedom. So that's how it works. So step 4 to 9 are essential exactly to create that. But again, you need to have the basis to do that, like the fellowship, like a sponsor, and like having accepted the fact that you are powerless over your alcohol and that you have a higher power, and you surrender to this higher power. Then you start to experience the beauty, the magnificence of this program. Step 11, after you finish step 9. Step 9 can be in the process. You might have a men's that will take years that you do, but once you set your mind and you already have the plan mapped out with your sponsor, it's already gone. It's done. Shame and guilt are gone. Fears are gone. Resentment are gone. You are really a free, clean person with this energy that is coming from inside, and suddenly you see life and you can enjoy as it is. That is the beauty of this program. Then you start to feel the beauty, really the magnificence of this program. And then step 11, you keep it. And then step 12, you do what is necessary to maintain that. You carry the message, you work with others, you do service, and you practice this principle in all your affairs. That's how it works. And then you are. You are a complete human being that just had already inside everything that you needed. You just need to take it out, to unplug what you plugged for so many years. At times when they call the sense of emptiness, actually it's so strange. Maybe it's the sense of being filled with too much, but cannot find it. It's so compressed. I do believe that we have the sense of joy in ourselves. We always had it, and we could never see it. It's just a matter to, in place of keep looking outside, turn your face, look inside. That's what you have to do. As when Dyer said, you're looking the wrong direction. You're looking outside in search for something that is inside you. Just turn your head. Don't look outside, because the outside will not give you something that you already have, and it is inside. So that's how you find it. You find it when you start to pick up all these bricks and these bins, these burned things, this garbage that you accumulated, and suddenly you keep unearthing. It says, oh my God, I am a damn good human being. And I have been a damn good human being all my life. So why? Because God really knows what He's doing. I needed this tool. I guess that I really stress. I feel blessed that I have been given this tool. Because if tonight, anytime that I share at the meeting, every time that I don't say anything at the meeting, anytime that maybe somebody watch me and can feel something positive just because of my alcoholism, I already accomplished something magnificent in my life. Absolutely. That gives me the joy. The fact that God can use me, and to do His bidding, how can you be that? How can I even think about, I don't have time to think about drinking or gambling anymore. Because the only time I use the time just to feel the joy, to enjoy the people, to enjoy my friends, to talk with people, to do something that gives me joy. And actually, that's what happened. I give joy out, and suddenly I see joy reflected toward me, and I think that the world is giving me joy. The joy is already inside. You know, I used to say, don't expect life to bring you joy. You bring joy to life. And you can do it because you already have the joy within. You have just to unplug it. Just unplug it. It's all there. Harm done to others. Go back because we would like to see a kind of structured way that you can do. Actually, there are different methods that you can use about that. Okay, you can do the historical type. When it came to mine, the way that I did actually, I start first from cities, then from countries. You know, I say, okay, who did I harm here in San Francisco? And I start to go through the years, okay? Then, okay, before coming here, I was in New York, okay? Who did I harm in Westchester County? And I mean, who did I harm in Miami? Okay, before Miami, who did I harm in the Bahamas? Who did I harm in Mexico? Who did I harm in Guatemala? Who did I harm in Nicaragua? Who did I harm in Panama? Who did I harm in Brazil? Who did I harm in Germany? Who did I harm in Italy? So I went back through my life and see all the geographic that I made. You know, I knew that most of my moves were geographic because I fucked up some way. So I know that I left somebody stuck with something in one of these countries. So I go back this way, okay? When it came to more recent aspects, I start to investigate the different aspects of my life. First, myself, in all aspects. Then, my family. I immediately went to go see my daughter and my son. How did I harm them? Which one were the fears that drove my behavior to harm them? Okay. My first wife, my second wife, my third wife. I'm thinking, I didn't learn easily. But my companion, my last girlfriend, the previous girlfriend, I start to examine why did it end? Why did it end it? How did it end it? What did I do? And then when the sexual aspect, the sex behavior start to get in. Was sex in terms of using the person? I was using sex to assuage my fear. I was using sex to feel better because of esteem reasons. So did I use this person? In which way did I harm this person? And then there is the fifth column over there that you can see. And that is extremely important for practical reasons. What would I do different today? Okay? Now, so what you proceed, when you have the little review of harm done to other, sex, okay? What I did actually, and what I found has been very helpful during my responses, to make the list first. You know, I harmed these people, and which kind of harm did I do to them? Okay. Being a compulsive gambler had a lot of financial harm done also. So I had to take into consideration, you know, money that I took that I was not supposed to take, or money that was given to me because oh my God, they're going to kill me, send me some money. You know, money that basically was given to me by my parents, let's say, or by my brothers, because I created the drama, you know. It's still harm done to them, and there is a financial reparation over there in terms of amends. But I try to see really which kind of harm we do. So you start to make the list of the people, okay? Who did I harm? And you start to put a name. And then what did I do? What it was the action or lack of it that you did to create the harm. Okay? This part, you know, the column of the self, it is important as it was on the resentment because it can give us a very clear idea of which one our motivation, the strongest motivation in our drive in our lives are. So the agendas that we have, okay? Because usually we harm somebody when our agenda is not met. Does it make any sense? Is that clear? So if I have an agenda, and you interfere with my agenda, I don't care a damn. You pay. At least until I can. So you check what your agenda was, and you check which kind of the instincts of your part of your life actually the agenda was based on. It was, insecurity, it was self-esteem, it was financial security, it was emotional security, it was social security. Okay? You will see that at a certain point, as previously, in the resentment, in the fears, a certain pattern will start to come out. And you will see that certain areas in your life, certain instincts in your life are felt most threatened. So you right away can pinpoint which one are the area that you are more sensitive to. The one that actually make you react right away in a attacking way, in a way that hurt other people. Okay? This one, so it gave you, so that when you start to say, well, I will be different, then every day you say, okay, today I will meet this woman. I usually have this kind of behavior. I try to embellish things. I try to vainglory, to say things that are not really true, or to withdraw certain truth, or I want to download all my stuff. I discover which area is that I'm more prone to behave in a negative way, so that I can say, okay, today when I'm going to meet this person, I would have to be careful not to do this, not to do this, not to do this. What would I do differently? Okay, so it's a practical purpose. Also, if you are in a relationship, and you know that a lot of behavior hurt your companion, before even going to make amends, let's stop the behavior that is hurting the other person. So with this way, when you say, I hurt this person because, and you just breaking down in parts, and you see the aspects of your fears, essentially, of your agenda, that were more affected to produce your reaction, okay? You already know where you have to be more careful. Then you go again on the defects. And in this case, I guarantee you, they put in the character defect and the character assets, it will become really interesting, because then you will start to see the character flaws. Do you remember? Okay? The first four, the one that I've mentioned in the book, and then all the other one. And in this case, I really, really tell you guys, keep the character assets chart with you. Because it will be, and I mentioned that before, it will be so easy to just try to go on the deep end and just see only the negative aspect of yourself. And I guarantee you, when you really go down, you will discover that actually, in the process of doing a lot of damage, you did a lot of good. You did a lot of good. It is important that you just put it down. Okay? So that then you have a much better balance of who you are and how you have to proceed when you will ask them to have your character defect removed. Okay? So it works the same way. The person that I have harmed, or the institution, it can be a bank, it can be a credit card holder. Compulsive gambler has very peculiar issues. But hey, not there, because how many drug addicts, they just did the same financial distraction that we did. But I want just to stress, maybe I'm very sensitive to this point, that even financial misdeeds have to be taken into account. You hurt people if you took money, you didn't return money. Stealing, you hurt people by stealing. But essentially, you hurt yourself. And actually, one thing that I would put over here, as I would put on the resentment list, I would put myself. Okay?
Yeah.
Because on the final analysis, the first victim of our behavior
Is yourself.
are us. And that is important that we establish exactly how we hurt ourselves, that we see the mechanisms that we use to hurt ourselves, to harm ourselves, because we can use that as a clear path for self-forgiveness. Okay? Because we have to forgive ourselves. So we go back to what we said about resentment and forgiveness about resentment. Self-forgiveness is absolutely essential. There are no two ways about that. Because if we do not forgive ourselves, again, we go into the shame and guilt, self-pity. Okay? The mechanism is really so simple. So what we have to avoid are fear, resentment, shame, and guilt. And the tools that we have, it is forgiveness, faith, and action. Is that clear as a process, no?
Yes.
So this one is essential. And then you will discover through this harm done to other and done to other yourself, if you really are kind of dedicated and really subtle and really honest, you will start to discover a lot of secondary character defects and primary qualities that you have. Because suddenly you can discover that actually, damn it, you were a damn good person. Oh, you didn't have that? Okay. This one is,
No,
I
I
went to
got
the
that,
sex
I got
one.
that.
These one are the two lists of character defects, okay? This one is the checklist of flaws and assets, as when mentioned at the beginning, you see the flaw, you see the assets, so you have to decrease the first and increase the second, okay? There is any other suggestion that you want to give in terms of how to do this list of harm done to others?
Well, there's one thing you didn't talk about that I always, my sponsor had me do, and my girlfriend's sponsor had her do, which was the ideal, the sexual
Or
ideal.
what I would do differently?
Oh yeah, that's
No.
right.
Yeah.
When you talk about like,
I am following, yes,
The
and,
ideal
no.
partner.
What
The
is your-
ideal partner, and then
you
How
know,
would I-
what is
yeah,
the-
why don't you-
in
why
the
don't
big book is we talk about, we've done this list.
Yeah.
We've done our resentment list, we've done our fears list, we've done our harm to others list, or the sexual inventory list. And then on page 69 it says
Appropriate.
it goes, where would have been selfish, dishonest, inconsiderate, whom would we hurt? That's what we just were talking about. Where were we at fault? What should we have done instead? We got this all down on paper. The next paragraph talks about, midway down, in this way we tried to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. We suggested each relationship, be the sex was itself or not, we asked to guide us to mold ideals and to help us live up to them. We remember always that our sex powers were God-given and therefore good, and not be taken lightly selfish. Whatever our ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow toward it. We must be willing to make amends where we have done, provided that we do not bring about still more harm. So in doing, in other words, we treat sex as we treat any other problem. Now, the thing that is not very loud in there, spoken wise, but we talk about, we try to shape a sane and set ideal, and we try to be willing to grow towards it. Those are two lines. The first line of the paragraph of the third paragraph, and the first line of the fourth paragraph, which is, we try to shape a sane ideal and towards our future sex life, and whatever our ideal is, we try to be willing to grow toward it. What my sponsor had me do, and what I've had sponsees do, and what I think is a good way of looking at it, is like, when you look at the assets list, and we look at our character defects, and we look specifically at our greatest character defects, self-centeredness. It's an easy one, right? So what we want is, we want someone who's selfless. We want someone who's caring and giving in our life, which is why we have become so self-centered. So I look at my character defects, and I look at my history and my behavior. Like, I'm an alcoholic. I'm a fat man. I have an interesting job career, but I look differently. I'm heavily tattooed. I'm pierced. I have had weird hair colors and done a lot of stuff. So I need someone who's going to be compassionate towards that. I have a sex addict problem. I have sexual behavior problems of past out that come out of my list. You know, my character defects. You know, I'm also sometimes inconsiderate when money. I get self-centered. I look at my character defects. You know, I'm looking at how these play out. So I'm an alcoholic man with sexual addiction history problems, alcoholic addiction problems, and I'm not a gambler, but I've definitely played loose and free with money. So I need someone who can understand that and be compassionate towards it. Now that means I'm looking for a sexual partner who's going to understand that. My girlfriend actually does fit my sexual ideal. Okay? I'm looking for a woman who's going to be compassionate about my size. I realize that I've been a big man my entire life. I've never been skinny. He's known me my entire life. I've never been skinny. I'm looking for a woman who can be compassionate and understanding about my alcoholism. Doesn't mean that she's sympathetic or she's condoning or she's embracing, like, oh, you're an addict, how great. Or like, let's go get drunk together, but she can be emotionally available to understand that. I'm looking for a woman who's going to be understanding about me feeling outside of society, and that I chased jobs and lifestyle choices. I was punk rock, I was anarchistic, I was traveled, I did crazy things, I got heavily tattooed, I did stuff that kept me outside of society. So I need a woman who's going to be understanding about that. So what am I looking for? I'm looking for a woman who's compassionate towards alcoholics, sex, size, lifestyle choices. But I need to stay sober and sane and serene in my life. So my girlfriend turns out to be an ex-stripper, tattooed, anarchistic, alcoholic, crack addict. I end up, because I work towards becoming spiritually clean, I end up with a woman who hasn't had a drink in nearly 3 years, who hasn't been involved in the sex industry for longer than that, who understands that depression and alcoholism work hand in hand, and she does it not just the steps, but she does she does medical maintenance, because she understands that I have physical problems, different physical problems. I have drugs that I have to take every day to stay sober, and sometimes they do make me feel different. But if I don't take them, I can't breathe. It's better to breathe than to not take my medication, my asthma and my allergy medication. Some asthma medications do affect you. So she has to take medications to stay out of depression. Different disease manifestation, right? But I work towards becoming compassionate to a woman who's an alcoholic, compassionate to a woman who has size and body issues. Because body issues is not just being fat, it's also being anorexic. You know, I could fall in love with a woman who turned out to have bulimia, and bulimia would be I have to be compassionate towards that, because I want compassion towards my size issues, which means is I have to work towards the compassion I would want for someone else who has those problems. And the person I find in my life quite often has either the same problems, like she could be fat, or she could fall the other direction. But the compassion that I'm looking for in that ideal and that I work for is, I pray to be understanding that my opinion may not be the right opinion, because sometimes I've had 3 women in my life that fit my sexual ideal. They've all been very different women with very different life choices and very different appearances. And 2 of them I dated while I was sober. And now, when I look back at my past behavior and I did my sexual inventory, I realized one woman had fit when I did sober, my sexual inventory list of attributes, character points. But I was so active in my disease of alcoholism and so unmanageable in my ability to keep life that I couldn't keep the relationship. And the second girl on that list, I was so unable and so dry, and I was not doing the steps, and I was not working on life based on spiritual problems, that relationship ended as well, because I wasn't doing the work. I was not willing to grow toward it. Even though I had found, I knew what kind of woman I wanted in my life. We could also say I wanted a hot woman. I wanted a beautiful one. I wanted a woman who had great big tits, But as I said to a friend of mine who said that this is on his sexual inventory, I'm like, okay, if you want a woman like that, you got to go to the gym every day, because if that's you've got to work towards it. If you want a woman who's beautiful, you've got to become as shallow. Because if you want a woman who's got a certain physical appearance, you got to work towards it yourself. Now, if you suddenly come to realize that that's unreasonable, maybe you'll become understanding that certain physical attributes are unreasonable to demand. They're nice, but I'm never going to be 19 years old and have
Big tits.
big tits. No, I'm never going to be a 19-year-old guy with a swimmer's body. It's never going to happen. It's not going to happen. So when I think about that's what I wanted a companion, and I then become willing to work towards it in a same manner, I have to change my ideal to fit what's sane. Because if I work towards an ideal that's not sane, I'm never going to have the serenity that I demand when I do the serenity prayer. But that for me, that was when I really came. I mean, I know it sounds silly, but that's when I really got to understand what my daily prayers were about. They were not about giving me a car. I want more money. God, I wish I could have sex 15 times a day. It was, when my sponsor explained that, I really got to understand that my prayers were for the other person. That I pray for the other person to get what they want. Because if they're happy and I'm happy, then we might be really happy. It's escalate. Just like if I have faith and I do the faithful stuff and do the prayer, it works out better. If I'm in self-doubt feeds itself. If I have fear, it feeds itself. And faith and serenity feed itself the same way.
Companies?
Absolutely.